Welcome to the ImAssuming podcast with Ija Mohan, and today I have Mr. Aziph Mustapha.
Hey.
Aziph, I think I met you courtesy of Frost and Sullivan
Ooh.
back in Iskandar, actually. Down south in Iskandar.
Yes.
There was there was a disruptive ideas session,
Right.
where I think I was sharing a little bit.
You were a speaker, and
And and at that point you were with Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia.
Yayasan Inovasi, that's right.
You were heading Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia.
Yep, at that point, yeah.
And I think we just connected, and in a way, I think we did some merchandising with your team. In a small way. So Yayasan, if you don't mind me jumping into it, right?
Sure.
I think one of the things I know you're not so active, or you claim you're not so active on social media, but over the years, what little I have observed is you are very big on, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're very big on motivating individuals from a very productive point of view. You know, it's not just that Tony Robbins, you can do it, yeah, kind of deal. It seems to be more focused in terms of, again, this is my assumption, as the show is called, I'm assuming. It's my assumption based on what I'm looking at it. And when you agreed, before I reached out to you, I also kind of did a little bit of research on LinkedIn and saying, what you were working on. And I didn't even know you had, years in MDEC before Yayasan Inovasi, right?
Yep.
So maybe you want to kind of share a little bit on, is my observation correct in the sense?
That's very interesting observation, actually. That kind of personal motivation kind of groove was built over the years.
Okay.
I think it was because I realized that in order to improve the productivity or efficiency, whatever you want to call it, of any organization, it really boils down to how the people in that organization are behaving and how they perform, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't improve any organization or performance if you don't get to the root of it, which is the people.
Okay.
Again, over the years, you realize that that's the most important thing. I think I'm at a stage of my life that if I can make an impact or a slight improvement on anyone's life, I think that makes it all worthwhile.
Okay, so I think you're spot on. In my humble opinion, that there's a tendency for people to look at companies and corporations like things, and then you realize that every company is basically individuals, right?
Exactly.
And I think when you realize that internally as well as externally, it makes us better people. What I mean by that is, I think you are very well versed that internally, if you don't take care of your people, your company is just not going to operate well, right?
For sure, yeah.
And what I mean externally is if our customers, if I'm a customer, and I just talk about, for example, TM or Maxis or DJ or whatnot, and think of them as this big evil corporation and everything, I'm dissatisfied and treating them like a thing instead of treating them like a group of people trying to achieve something, right? I think it serves me as a customer. I'll be a better human being if I can humanize an organization.
Yep.
And I think it's vice versa, as the organization also.
Of course. In my work, of course, we don't try and change the customer's view because we have no control over them.
Right.
Really. But the thing that I have control over now is how we treat our employees. And if we don't treat our employees in a humane and in a kind, in a way that makes them feel good about themselves and good about the work that they do, there's no way we can project that humane or human face to our customers. Right, so we must internally believe that this is an awesome place to work.
Okay.
And I'm treated as a human being, and I'm valued for what I do.
Okay.
And then we can project that outwards towards the customers. So that's kind of my mission right now.
Okay. So currently you are with Axiata, and you're heading culture transformation.
Culture transformation and employee engagement at Celcom Axiata.
Celcom Axiata. Okay, so I think that's very interesting. But before I ask you about Axiata, right? Can we talk a little bit about Yayasan?
Sure.
Because you spent a good amount of time there.
Yeah, 6 years.
And I think it's one of those agencies where, when I first came across Yayasan ImAssuming Malaysia and I'm talking to you and interacting with a few members of your team, it felt like a very interesting organization, right? But I must confess, I never grasped the total objective of what Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia was about, right? And I suspect many other people might have heard of it, but might not really truly understand what was it about. So you were with them for almost 4 years, 4 years plus?
6 years.
6 years. And you were there as, I think, at COO during the early days.
Yep.
And acting CEO and then CEO, right?
Yep.
So I think you'll be the perfect person to kind of give a evangelical idea of evangelize YAM, right?
Sure. Sure. Well, they're still around. They still do good work. I like to say those were one of the highlights of my career.
Okay.
I mean, I loved it there. I was brought in kind of to set it up. I was one of the first employees.
Wow.
And we set up the system. It was from nothing. So we had a blank slate, and it was an opportunity to build something great out of nothing, really.
Okay.
But the mandate was grassroots innovation.
Okay.
So innovation, of course, is a very wide subject, right? Innovation can happen anywhere. And typically when we talk about innovation, people think about research houses or, scientists or whatever.
Right.
But grassroots innovation is this concept where innovation can happen anywhere. And especially in rural areas or underserved communities. So that was our focus.
Okay.
And we kind of modeled it against this organization in India, headed by Professor Anil Gupta.
Okay.
So I actually visited him there once. It was an amazing experience. But anyway, what he does is...
Which part of India?
Pune.
Pune, okay.
So he does a annual innovation walk.
Okay.
That covers basically the most remote areas of India.
Okay.
And he walks like hundreds of kilometers with scientists and with researchers with him. So they walk from village to village to kind of discover innovation and
over a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, they take one season in a year, and I think it takes a couple of weeks or a month, and they just walk to places where there's no electricity, no running water, and they talk to the people there, and they kind of discover innovations.
Okay.
And they've come up with some amazing stuff. Many of it is traditional medicines and healing and things like this. And some of them have been patented and made into, manufactured goods that are being sold.
I mean, these are actually ideas or products from these rural communities.
Region, yeah, from the communities.
And they help to kind of commercialize it.
Exactly. And they, they attribute the patents to those people.
Okay.
So that they have a continuous kind of income.
Instead of exploiting them.
Exactly.
And
Yep. So that was kind of the model.
Okay.
And, Prof. Gupta is also a philosopher. He says cool things like, minds on the margins are not marginal minds. So
hey, that's very deep.
Yeah, it is deep. So, and I've met him many times, and every time I'm just amazed with what he's done. But anyway, so our minister at that time, Maximus Onkili, YB Maximus Onkili, met him and was so impressed and said, we need to do something of this nature. So we modeled against them.
Okay.
It was the National Innovation
What was the
Foundation.
organization that he was running called?
NIF, a National Innovation Foundation of India.
Okay.
So basically the concept is there's innovation everywhere.
Okay.
How can we help people in rural areas or underserved communities get out of the predicament that they're in through innovation? So we did our own jejak inovasi, we called it. And we went around the country. We didn't walk.
Okay.
Like Prof did.
We don't walk.
We took air-conditioned 4x4s. We stayed in hotels.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've discovered thousands of innovations.
Okay.
Created by people who wanted to make their lives better.
Okay.
Right? And they did stuff related to their daily lives, like how they harvested paddy, or how they
Mm.
clean water, how they generated electricity from streams.
So these were things. I'm hearing correctly, these are things that these rural folk take it that this is just what I need to do to survive this part of their daily life, without realizing that it is an idea that they can potentially monetize or commercialize, right?
Exactly. And it was during this period, I mean, like I said, it was a 6-year period that I solidified my view that, you know, I knew human beings are precious and pure and all of this, but after having met so many of these innovators in the kampungs especially, and, you know, I just truly believe that human beings can do anything that they set their minds to. Because I met like some pakcis in kampungs that people thought were crazy. You know, these are the guys on the margins of the kampung that people don't talk to, because, you know, don't go to this pakcik's house because he's nuts. He never leaves his house, right? Because he's in this workshop. I mean, he built his own man cave in his little hut, and he builds stuff. And he, you know, he's so passionate about what he does. He doesn't go out. He doesn't go to weddings, and he doesn't talk to the people at the surau. Right? I can relate. Yeah, we love doing what we do. And so we found so many people like that. And so many of them have told me this is the first time anyone has validated anything that they've done. They felt that they themselves believed that they were on the margins. They believed they could never become mainstream. They don't like talking to people. But we found this one pakcik, and he became like an ambassador for us. Right? He was the one manning our booths when we did exhibitions. He's the one training kids. He had this. His innovation was, you know, the kompang that the Malays play during weddings and all of this. It typically has a cow hide or a kambing skin on it, right? To make the sound. So he took X-rays that he had lying around, and he put it on the frame, and it made, he said, a decent sound. And he's a kompang teacher lah. So he set up a troupe in his kampung, reskin all of his drums using X-rays, which were free, you know. And he, you know, this concept is now across the country. People use it already because, you know, cow hides or kambing skins are so expensive. And people don't have access to it. So now they actually use this free stuff that they get from hospitals or whoever donates to them. And that, you know, all of us have X-rays lying under our beds anyway, right?
Yes.
You don't know where to put it. It's so big.
We don't want to think about those, so it's always hidden somewhere.
And it's so big, it doesn't fit on a bookshelf.
Yes.
So it's under the bed somewhere. So he's done that, and we've actually sort of commercialized it. And, you know, we
that means he how do you commercialize something like that, in the sense that there's, like, I have X-rays, right? How do I now fit into this ecosystem?
So that's the kind of the creative stuff that we had to come up with. You know, people would send it to him. I mean, the simplest way is because there is a technique involved, and because there are some specialized tools that he created. He's able to do it more efficiently and quicker and more and better than you could do it yourself. So people send it to him. He makes a kind of a living out of reskinning and sending it back to people. But we also created like souvenir kompangs. So you had X-ray taken and for whatever reason you want to commemorate that.
No. I mean, you know, I have I'm a little bit of a salesman, right? And my merchandising brain straight away goes to like, so, you know,
so you
I
could actually
surgery,
order something, right? You can order it. You have a miniature kompang frame, and your actual X-ray is on it, and you hang it on a wall.
And then if you have a display, you just put an LED light behind it, right? You can switch
so we had many crazy stuff like that. But anyway, it was an awesome experience for me. I loved what we did. We was a very young team. It was a small agency, but it was a government agency. So as CEO, I reported to the Minister of Science. And the Minister of Science is the chairman of the Board of Trustees. Right? So it's a serious organization. And
when you say the chairman of the Board of Trustees, that means sorry, my phone is ringing for no reason. Let me put my phone on silent. You see, I should be ahead of
things that you learn when you run a podcast.
So sorry. So when you say the Board of Trustees, that that means that there is a trust set up for this.
Yeah.
And when I hear something like the trust, I'm not very well versed, so you have to correct me here. That means there's a fund set up and the trustees kind of approve the plans by the agency.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be what I wanted to ask you was that something like this, right? I mean, the word innovation is thrown around a lot, but I think it is hard to quantify. Trying to go out and getting the rural folk to it's such a difficult thing to quantify, right? So how do you set KPIs for yourself in that sense?
I mean, that's always been the challenge, but we've had, like I said, a board of trustees, and these are, you had really experienced guys in there, had professors and tansris and CEOs of large organizations. So because it was formed by the government and Prime Minister at the time was actually the patron.
Okay.
So we could, galvanize captains of industry to help us as well.
Okay.
So, but it was set up as a trust, and government gave us a seed funds.
Okay.
And a matching grant. So what it means is if he manages to raise any sort of funds through donations or contributions or whatever, the government will match it dollar to dollar.
And the match comes as a grant or comes as
so
that's
if
cool.
I raise $1 million from the corporations, the government will then match another.
So the corporation's $1 million might be a loan, but the government's part would be a grant.
The whoever gives us has to give it as a donation to the yayasan.
Okay. So anyone participating in those programs had to come in as a donation, as a grant, so to speak, and the government also match whatever. That's actually very interesting.
So it was an interesting model. It was quite difficult. I'll tell you why. Because the industry sees innovation development as the government's job. The industry says, I do my own innovation. I fund my own labs and all that. So I've done my part. But this grassroots thing, it's you can't get us to fund it. This is something that the government. So in their minds, this is it's like building roads or building schools. You don't ask the industry.
So when they do this, they almost look at it as a CSR initiative rather than something to build.
So that's one of the struggles I've always had while I was there. But it's interesting. I think it's needed still. Although I don't know YBKJ's views on this, as he's Minister of Science, Technology, Innovation now. He's been active. I've seen him, at YIM events and all of that. So I hope, things are moving forward. I'm actually interviewing him.
Wow.
YBKJ, early December.
Okay.
There's a conference by ISPIM. ISPIM is the International Society for Professional Innovation Management. So I'm a member and I've spoken at a couple of the events. So they asked me to host the Malaysian leg of a 24-hour innovation marathon. So they're going to start in Japan for 1 hour. Then they're going to China, and we are the third stop in Malaysia. Then it'll go for 24 stops around the country.
So
23 stops.
It's a non-stop digital online journey. People can tune in to the
24 hours straight.
Wow.
So I'm going to host 1 hour on the 7th of December.
Wow, that's soon.
And YBKJ just accepted my invitation. So after Malaysia, is going to go to Thailand and then that region.
Is it just going to be you and KJ or do you have other people?
For that 1 hour, I have also Dr. Rezal Ahmad, who's the CEO of Nano Malaysia. So Nano Malaysia is an agency developing nanotechnology.
Wow.
Very innovative stuff that they're doing as well. So yeah, that's kind of my life. Outside of Celcom, I'm still in the innovation space.
I mean, KJ is a very interesting person. I have a personal story as well, in the sense that I'm not sure you know this, but I'm not Malaysian, right? So I was actually, my mom's Malaysian, wife's Malaysian, kids Malaysian, but I was born in India. We came here and I was not able to get citizenship or PR. It was too much red tape. And I was on Twitter, and I met KG at a Twitter event, and I actually tweeted him after that or before that, and saying that, hey man, I'm as Malaysian as they come, and I'm not able to get my PR sorted. So he actually responded, got his PA involved, and actually wrote a letter of support to kind of get the whole thing moving.
Wow.
And I ended up getting PR after a while. Of course, there was I never actually met him personally or his team, but just by I sent my dossier to them, they reviewed it. Okay lah, they can help to support, blah blah. It was still a 2-year process, but it kind of happened, right? So
My goodness.
I always see when it comes to politicians, you hear all kinds of stories lah. But for me, it's how effective are you, right? If you say you're going to do something, can you do it? Are you effective? He seems like a very smart person. I don't know him personally, but he seems like a very smart person. I tend to discount politicians in what they say in the surface lah, because you got to do by party lines and all that. But he seems like one of those characters that's very effective,
genuine, and
the type that if he were to put his mind to something, I would imagine he can probably get it done.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Discounting all the political.
He was the only minister that tweeted me.
Wow.
So this is an interesting story. So one day,
so we got Twitter stories of
KJ. For KJ. So anyway, there was this lady who kept contacting Yim and wanted to meet me, right? For some reason, and of course, I mean, not to be rude, but as a CEO, you have a lot of things to do, right, on your plate. So if somebody is unscheduled, it's very unlikely that I'd meet him or her, right? So I said, I told my guys, man, she had came without an appointment.
Okay.
So I said, boleh lah, I'm kind of busy. But then one of my guys said, boss, she's quite old. She's an elderly lady. She's an elderly lady, and she's here already. I said, so when I heard that, I said, okay lah, with her face lah, I'll give her 10 minutes. So this nice old lady came, and we ended up talking for an hour.
Wow.
And she had so many ideas. So she's running this NGO, and she had so many things to do. I thought it's an amazing lady. So I took a photo with her, and I posted it on Instagram. And at that time, my Instagram was kind of tied to Twitter. I'm not a Twitter guy, so I'm not on Twitter. But it was posted. Okay. It was reposted by the KSU of Mosti.
Okay.
And said, Dr. Rama is such a sweet lady. I didn't know who she was, right? And then KJ reposted, said, hey, that's my mom.
Oh, wow.
So I'm glad I didn't push her away, you know what I'm saying? But I totally didn't know it was his mom until he tweeted. He said, hey, it's my mom. I said, wow.
That's interesting. I think, and that's one thing I really appreciate about Malaysian culture, right? We have this, this adat of, being polite to elders. There's I would dare say that there is a string of kindness that is there lah. Whether we choose to acknowledge it or choose to ignore it, but I think society as such, by default, there's this. Hey, respect your elders, right?
True.
Which you don't necessarily see in other parts of the world.
In the West, probably not. People freak out. They don't understand that. We were just watching something on Instagram last night. One of these things that come in your feed, right? Of the viral stuff. So it was this kid. He was an American Muslim, American Arab. So he wanted to prank his friends, right? There was these teenagers. They were just hanging out, playing games in their room. And one guy said, I'm going to prank my friends.
Okay.
So he pretended to speak to his mom. He said, Mom, don't call me at this time, no? I don't want to talk to you. Go away. So his friends turned around, started throwing stuff at him. Why are you talking to your mom like this? Yeah. How can you then one of them actually stood up and beat him up and said, how can you disrespect your mother? So it was funny. So I showed that to my son. Obviously, I said, hey, dude.
So how old is your son?
12.
Does he relate?
Of course. He totally saw it. I mean, we didn't even tell him it was a prank. He said, what is he doing? Then when the guy stood up, he said, they got pranked. And, but he understood immediately that you don't disrespect anyone's mother, right?
When I was in college many, many years ago, I heard one of my mother's friends telling her a story where her friend lives in the UK, I believe, and was telling a story of how in the UK, she was visiting a friend in the UK, and they were in the house, and the doorbell rang. Right. So because she was talking to a friend, the son actually went to the door to answer the door, and apparently it was somebody looking for a donation. right? And usually when people are, even if somebody comes and asks for donation now, because we're engaged with this, we're like, hey, no lah, no, because your mind is focused on something else, right? So she was focused on the conversation. The mother said, no, tell them to go away, right? And the son was very unhappy about it, right? And he actually called the mom an expletive, saying, oh, you stingy B-word, right? To the mother, right? So the friend here was just like shocked, didn't say anything. And then her friend was just like, oh, this boy, right? And life goes on. So when they were telling their story to my mother, I was just listening. I was just like, what? You can say that?
Exactly.
And live?
Exactly.
And walk?
Exactly.
So this idea of, and that is when I think I first realized that, we don't treat parents and elderly the same way everywhere in the world, right?
I just wrote about Khabib. Are you a MMA fan?
Yeah.
So obviously
not a big fan, but I definitely know him. I follow.
So one of the things that the West was just freaked out about, when he won against Conor a few years ago. At the post, he jumped over the thing and he beat up Conor's teammates and all that. He created this riot and all that. So at the post-fight press conference, he apologized. He said, this was not my best side. So as he got up to leave, he said, you know what? I'm sorry again, but you know what? I'm going to go home and my dad's going to smash me. My dad's going to kill me, he said. I don't know what to say, but he's going to... And he was 30 years old probably at that. World champion. Yeah. He had the belt around his waist.
Yeah.
He's at the top of his game, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, my dad's going to kill me.
Yeah.
People in the West we can relate to that because,
very much so. Yeah.
Even if we have 5 kids, we still respect our dad. So he put that out. And what I wrote about was he just beat Justin Gaethje and he retired.
Yes.
Right? And everybody saw that video of him crying, like breaking down in the middle of the ring, of the octagon. And I said, I put out a video, I said, how many stereotypes or assumptions did Khabib break down just by being honest and being, authentic?
Vulnerable, being himself,
being himself.
Yeah.
So he missed his dad, had passed away a couple of months ago because of COVID. And this was the first fight that he did without his dad by his side. Well, when he fought in the US, the dad didn't get a visa. So he never had his dad by his side. But the last fight, in Abu Dhabi, the dad was there. And so anyway, he just broke down, right? And all of these assumptions of Russians being mean or heartless or, tough guys, not boys can't cry, this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
With that sort of display of emotion, he just broke down those stereotypes. And
so actually this is one of the tough ones because stereotypes, right, is... I was having a conversation just the other day with the editor of Chili Sauce, Chuck Conlau, right? And we were talking about stereotypes, right? And, at what point does the stereotype, go into discrimination? That means, when you have a stereotype about someone, but if it's a man, then are you being sexist by having stereotypes on men and women? Or if it is a stereotype of, Indians, Chinese, Malays, when are you a racist versus a stereotype, right? So it's one of those things. I feel it's incredibly, I think, tricky to navigate. I don't think we can't have the conversation, but it is very hard to have the conversation without it being misconstrued as you're going left and right.
It's tough, yeah. But these are definitely one of the hard conversations we need to have.
Yeah.
So, I showed the video to my son again, 12 years old. I said, because he is also very vulnerable and, he lets out his emotion. And sometimes he feels bad about it. He said, I'm 12 years old, I'm a boy, but I cry. And I showed him, hey, this is the toughest guy on the planet, man. He's Khabib, right? He beats everybody up and he cries, So it's not something that you need to be ashamed of, but it has to be appropriate and, not just for no reason lah.
Yeah, I mean that is a tough one lah. The typical one is what boys or men don't cry, right?
Exactly.
That is the number one stereotype.
Exactly.
And I think when it comes to, especially our parents lah, I think emotions is at peak lah. Whatever it is, right? I can't lie. I've had times when I've disagreed and argued with my mother. And I cannot sleep, I literally, I cannot sleep. Even my wife will look at me, I'll be on my phone and, and in bed, right, I'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that, I didn't mean that. I'm like messaging
Feels
my
so
mom.
bad, right?
Because it's that, because I cannot, my mom might be 100% wrong and I might be 100% correct. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she's wrong or, if I'm right. But I can't believe, I was rude to her, right? Oh, I can't accept that. And until, my mom kind of says, it's okay, I love you, blah, blah, blah.
And
your heart, they say reda. I don't know what's the English equivalent to reda.
Subside.
So, yeah.
Reda,
I can't sleep, And, then I ask myself, does this make me a mama's boy, right? Are you a mama's boy if you're so sensitive to your mother's feelings? Then I'm like, if that's what it means, I have no issue being a mama's boy.
Put that on a t-shirt, right? I'll wear it.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what it means, I say, okay, I have no issues being called a mama's boy if it means that I care what my mother thinks or how she feels, right? And I think we can't have that kind of conversation publicly, because even when you're with a group of friends, whether you're playing any sports, playing football or whatnot, it's all about, you gotta be a man. Hey, don't be soft,
tough,
Yeah, and it's a front, It's such a
so much
disingenuous front.
Do you play any sports nowadays?
I used to play a lot of football.
Yeah.
But not recently, especially not in the past couple of years.
I have actually, in these older years of mine, have gotten into more organized sports. So I've played basketball almost all my life. I mean, since college. But lately, I've been playing organized ball. So we have a team. At least
what
for
is
the past
organized
5 years.
ball?
Well, you play in tournaments.
Okay.
So even at my age, I play in these leagues.
Okay.
So it's organized as referees. Everybody has a jersey on, and that sense of brotherhood or whatever you want to call it. You want to call it macho or whatever. It's just amazing. So that gives me my high. I mean, it's just once a week typically. One game over the weekend, one practice session at night. But I just want to talk to you about stereotypes, right? So in one game, I was having probably one of the best games. I mean, I'm not a super player, but I can score. So every game I can score, right? So during this one particular game, we had somehow lots of people watching. Typically we don't, but a couple of our guys brought friends, and they brought.
And
friends.
This is not like office or something. This is independent.
We have teams from all over the country.
Okay.
So we had this league on, and
it's an amateur league.
Yeah, it's definitely an amateur league. You can't have people who play for the country on your team, things like that. That's one of the rules. So to keep it kind of
in
level
terms of
playing
age,
field.
there's
Anyway, it's open. There is a veterans category sometimes, but in this particular tournament, we didn't play in the veterans category because not many of my teammates are my age. So we played in an open category, but there are divisions. So we played in Division 2 or Division 3 that year. I'm not sure, but the people in the top leagues, the first division, are very, very good, and we can't compete with them. So anyway, in this particular game, there was a loose ball, and I was breaking free all alone, going towards the basket, and I made the basket. So it was amazing. But after the game, somebody shared a video because there was people capturing it. So there was a video of me making this basket, and I was like, this is the highlight of my life. But you can hear the girl who was taking the video go Pachi! And I'm like, come on, damn. And this video is still pulled out every time somebody talks about age. In whatever basketball group I'm in, suddenly you talk about age, this video comes out again. It's still alive. Go Pachi! I'm like, okay lah, I've accepted it. I'm 50 plus now. I'm a Pachi. So
Aziph, I must tell you, right? I am in my 30s. And I think the minute I turned 30, right, I accepted the fact that I accepted my uncle status, right? In the sense that it's okay, I'm big, I look like an old man. I look like an old man when I was in my 20s. So I was like, I accepted. And then it was very entertaining to see my friends who are like the same age try to battle this idea of don't call me uncle. Because see, our Asian culture also, right? Any young kid looks at you. If the minute they think you're a little bit older, it is uncle.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't go to the abang so much lah. It's straight away to uncle, right? So even when we play football, like just for fun in the padang,
Yeah.
the small kids there kick the ball to, uncle pass the ball, and then my friends, they like
Freak out,
"Ugh."
yeah.
You know that they call me an uncle, right? God damn it. So, but for me, I was like, I accept it. Like it's okay. You know, I accept my uncle status. I'm okay with it. But it's very. I find it very entertaining to see my friends still battle with
I'm
it.
probably one of those guys who battled it for a while,
Okay.
but recently, I married off my son, my eldest son,
Wow.
recently, just in August.
Okay.
I wrote an article about that became I became quite famous in the LinkedIn circle.
Really, ah?
Because people actually, I titled it "How I Project Managed the Wedding of the Year." So it became a project management thing, right?
Okay.
So the whole article was about going through the project management steps
Right.
to
Okay.
get because, true story, we only had 2 weeks notice from
Wow.
the time he told us, "Mom, Dad, I'm getting married,"
Wow.
to the actual reception, 14
Wow.
days. So I pulled off that
But
in
you
14
knew
days.
the girl he's getting married.
No.
Wow,
He
did a
introduced
smoke screen.
Oh man. I mean, he said he's gonna bring a friend over for
Okay.
dinner. Okay. I
Okay.
mean, he's brought a few over the
Okay.
years, and
Okay.
he's 28 years old, so he's not
Okay.
not a kid. So okay,
You know, I would have never guessed you have a 28-year-old
bring
kid.
bring your friend. Okay, so the friend came, and after dinner, over coffee, he goes like, "Mom, Dad, we have a date." He says, "That's all he said. We have a date." I said, "Yeah, aren't you having a date now at my expense, coming to my house?" He said, "No, not that kind of date." We went to the mosque near my house. He said. And we talked to the imam, and he gave us a date. And there's only 2 reasons you go to the imam for a date lah. Either you're gonna get married or you get circumcised. I'm pretty sure this boy was circumcised when he was young, so when he's still a kid.
Oh, God.
So he got a date. I said, "When's the date?" The date is 27th. He said, of August. He came to us on the 15th of August.
This
So
was
12
this year.
days. Yeah, just a few months back.
Wow.
So he gave us 12 days notice for his nikah, which is the solemnization lah, ceremony at the mosque. So I go, "When's the reception?" And millennial being him, he's like, "Well, don't need lah reception, wajib, the mandatory thing is to get the nikah, to get married. So I'm just gonna get married." He didn't prepare for anything. And I'm like, I got lots of friends. Hello, you're the first marriage among my children. We're going to have,
Yeah, something.
we are going to have a wedding party. But thankfully, because of MCO lah, we had a very small affair, 150 people at
Okay.
my house in our front yard. So it wasn't a big thing lah.
Okay.
Luckily, because lah, Malaysian weddings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Typical is 1,000 people nowadays. 1,000 people is normal.
I've heard of them because it's too big now, breaking weddings.
Over days, right?
Yeah, groom side, bride
Oh my
side.
goodness. No, yeah, that's normal as well. Groom side, bride side. But the number of guests
Yeah,
is just...
yeah.
And there's no way I could afford 1,000 men, 1,000
short
guest
notice
wedding
lagi
lah.
lah.
Tak boleh lah. If it's not budgeted, So anyway, because of MCO rules, we managed to pull off a very small, intimate wedding in 14 days. And I wrote about that.
And her
I wrote
side
an
was
article.
also okay with.
No, yeah, we just came together and we said, because her family is in Kelantan, so
Okay.
we actually haven't done it over there yet. We're going
Okay.
to do that. He's going to arrange that soon, but we just do it over here. No, he actually had driven to Kelantan, talked to the girl's father, gotten permission, done all of this before he talked to us. So I'm like,
So okay, let me ask you something, right? If listening to this story, I feel it actually shows a lot of maturity and pragmatism on your son's side, right? And I think credit is to you guys for bringing him up like that, right? But as a parent, also for him to spring that to you, I know you nak cekik dia, so I can believe that, right? But why do you think, why do you think he was so chill about it, in the sense that 2 weeks notice to my dad, that's fine, that's more than enough.
Yeah, it was kind of a spur of the moment decision on his side as well, I guess.
Okay.
I think it was even done while he was driving to Kelantan, or while he was there with the dad. Maybe they decided kind of, earlier is better, which I respect.
Yeah.
As soon as he got that decision and he made the arrangements, he didn't want to kind of burden us with anything. So he did the arrangements with the imam and the mosque and all that himself. So yeah, I think it would.
No, that's like, it's very gangster, in the sense that he sorted out the important bits, and he's like, came to you like, whatever you guys want to
Decisions
do to
made,
make you
right?
happy, whatever you need to do to make it happy, you go ahead lah. But I kind of got the whatever needs to be done, I've sorted it out.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. I
So,
mean, it shows a lot of, I think a lot of confidence. Where you're not. I think he still did the right thing, like asking for her hand in marriage from her folks, and then also coming and giving you the respect and talking to you as well. But also kind of like, this is the decision that I want for my life. Very rare. It's very rare.
It is rare. It is rare, and that has helped my wife and I grow as well. Because we have all of these preconceived ideas. Oh, we have to do this for a wedding, or our kids are gonna go through this and that. But end of the day, when things come, and God is the best planner, right? We can't plan everything.
Yeah.
It comes along. What do you do? Are you going to reject the kid? Are you going to say don't get married? So we had a heart-to-heart discussion, my wife and I. As soon as they left, we said, okay, let's figure this out, right? And of course, she was freaked out. I was freaked out, and we were both, what are we going to do? But suddenly, this project manager inside me just woke up and said, okay, let's put out a project plan for 10 days.
Something you mentioned was very interesting to me. That you mentioned the fact that it was the first child that's getting married, so we're definitely doing something right. And I think it's very true. In my own case, me and my wife, we kind of eloped. Right. We didn't run away anywhere, but we just told our families we're not gonna have a wedding. We will get registered. Right. We might throw a party, right? But we are not going through the whole process, and I think both our families were okay with it. Maybe they just wanted to have it done over. But one of the things that one of the key factors why I thought both our sides were okay with it, because I had an older sister that got married a couple of years ago, and she had an older brother who also got married a couple of years ago. So both families have had their big wedding out of the way, right? And I think once somebody goes through a wedding and goes through the hassle of a wedding,
exactly,
I think parents sometimes secretly tell them never again.
Cukup lah.
You'll never say it out loud, but I think in your mind you're like, oh, why did we do this to ourselves, right? So in that sense, I think both our parents kind of gave the blessing to not make a big hoo-ha.
No, I have to be honest. I mean, I was quite relieved that we didn't have to go through, because my sister-in-law was saying, you must, count your blessings, because we had a year's notice. And basically they were stressed for one entire year. So now we got it done in 2 weeks, and she's like, we're happy.
I'll tell you something. I thought I was being very clever, and I was giving my wife excuses as to why not to get married. I injured my leg during football. I had a couple of surgeries, and I was like using all these things as an excuse. And also I was running my own company. It was a startup at that point, so a lot of uncertainties.
Right.
And she was like, hey, we're getting older, we should settle down. I'm like, I was kind of like making it difficult, giving her reasons that we should wait, right? And she was very smart, very patient with me. And I was like, oh, if you get married, given the situation, blah, blah, we should not even have a wedding, just do a registration. And you say all those things to put a girl off, right? And wife's smarter than me, right? She was like, yeah, sure, okay. And I was like, what?
Now you're stuck.
Yeah, it's like, no wedding? Okay, I'm okay with that. I was like, oh crap, I didn't expect you to say okay, right? So in that sense, we just got it done like that lah. So no wedding, no nothing. I think our parents were happy about it. Happy and sad, because I think parents do want to share the experience with their relatives, have all the relatives over, and kind of, it's a communal thing, which I think we robbed them of. But I think they got it done with the first kid lah, so I'm happy in that sense.
Yeah, so for me, we did, and we got the best wedding photographers that we could afford and the best videographers, and we sent out a notice and saying, this is why you weren't invited for my son's wedding. So we shared it with them, but we had a very good excuse, government mandated excuse that we can't invite everyone.
Yeah.
So
Legit.
that process also was very interesting to us because it really made us, you know, do we need 1,000 people to come? You know?
Yeah.
Right? So this assumption of what a wedding should be is totally turned upside down nowadays. So because I thought we had a beautiful wedding. I mean, that's me lah, because I was also the wedding planner lah, the contractor, the flower arranger.
A
That
bit
was all me.
biased.
A bit biased, but I thought it was wonderful. So
No,
I was happy.
okay, that's actually, if knowing what you know now, would you say big lavish weddings are necessary, or what is your stand on?
Yeah, I've always known that, you know, people need to stick in their lanes lah, basically. You know, if you can afford it, why not? If you're a multi-millionaire, you want to blow $1 million on a wedding and invite everybody and make everybody happy, by all means. But if you have to borrow money, or you know, that just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Especially if you put a young man, you know, deep
Yes.
in debt. Just
And
because
starting out a life with
your
that,
parents want to have a huge wedding, and that makes no sense. You know, to me, it's religiously also it's not mandatory. It's obviously recommended to have a feast and invite people so that people can know these two are lawfully wed. You know, that's the whole reason. And I think we fulfill that need. We did a small one. We invited some neighbors. You know, everybody knows now that my son is married. You know, one of the things we talked about that we had to have a wedding is we don't want to give an announcement that here's my grandson or granddaughter, right? And people are going to say, where's the wedding? No, so that's not going to happen.
I hear you. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, our culture, right?
Yeah.
Our culture
No,
is-
actually, I think the Asian culture, Southeast Asian culture of feeding people very important.
of course.
Of, you know, this idea of, like, you know, kanduri and all that.
Yes.
And I think there is a very how do I say, it's almost spiritual, like, you know. And I think whether it's the Malay culture, the Indian culture, or even the Chinese culture, the act of feeding people is seen as, you know, some kind of good pahala.
Yeah,
and
of course.
it's good, right?
Of course.
And I think that leads to those big lavish weddings, because the idea is, hey, you want people to come, you want people to be happy and eat and you know, and feast and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. People can go overboard lah. If you can afford it, exactly. Why not? Yes.
But I really enjoyed that it was smaller, that we got to interact with everyone. You know, these big weddings, you just go and makan and leave.
Yes.
There's really nothing that you get out of it. You meet some friends, maybe, hopefully. You'll be put, because in big Malay weddings, it's just, you know, free seating, right? You come, you sit down, whatever is available, you eat, and then you leave. So you're lucky to shake the hand of the bride or groom, or meet even the parents. But, you know, if it's so big, you can't. So it's nice to have small weddings where everybody is together and you get to talk to people.
Do you think, although I must say this, I don't see this so much in Malay weddings, right? But I think Chinese weddings, and to a certain extent even Indian weddings now, or maybe I'm talking about my generation lah kan, is there's this whole perception, and it's a very sensitive topic, this whole perception of duit ang pao, right? You're giving, right? And I think if you want to give, you give, it's genuine, that's fine. But right now, from what I hear, even before I got married, is always this idea of, oh, I got invited to somebody's wedding. Oh, which hotel? Oh, Mandarin. Oh, must give at least 200 ringgit per person. And suddenly I realized there's this calculation that my generation does, where, oh, if I do it in a nicer hotel, the people I invite should also give me more money. And the people who are attending also like, oh, you should give more money because it's a nicer hotel.
It's a ROI discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've listened to people talking, and it blew my mind that, oh, you know, after the wedding, you can actually get recover full cost, and if your close family members are rich, you can even profit. And suddenly it's a transaction, you know, or, you know, the smarter younger kids are, the wedding is paid for by parents. Whatever ang pao they take.
I mean, that's such a shame lah. I mean, honestly, before this, weddings are weddings lah. You go to weddings, but until you arrange one of your own, you know, the significance of it and the purity of it really makes an impact. Before, it was just you attend the wedding, you pay or whatever.
Yeah.
But now, this is my son's wedding, right?
Yeah.
And now I understand the significance. And of course, it shouldn't be that transactional or that business-like, right? You want to count how much money you get, how much you put out.
No, but to be fair, from talking to my mother, because I was like, hey, why is this so transactional? Because I've heard of even Indian families, right? They have a logbook of all the weddings they've attended, who they've given money to, so that when you organize your children's wedding, you expect all these people that you gave money to come back and to match, And the funny thing is, I have friends my age who practice this.
Wow.
They know who give who they have given money to and how much they can expect to collect.
Wow.
So if I give $50, I expect $50, for example, right?
Wow.
But to be fair, when I talk to my mom and talk about all that, she tells me, like, back in the day, weddings, I mean, even now, but back in the day, weddings were expensive, and it is expensive for a family to afford it. So usually the community comes together.
It's very communal,
and they're like, we give you money so that we help you, we help subsidize or help you
I was
pay
just
for
gonna say, I think this is carrying on of that tradition, because in our kampung, in my mother-in-law's kampung in Malacca, that's still the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
And you have a wedding, and you're not expected to give money, but you're expected to give eggs or flour or brass or whatever you can afford, right?
Yes.
So people bring bawang, people bring whatever, vegetables, and that is totally expected. There's no way out of it.
Yeah.
So if even my mother-in-law doesn't have a penny to her name, she will do whatever it takes, because she said, this is expected. I have to go because this is so-and-so's daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
You have to do this.
Yeah.
So I guess nowadays, we're not going to go and cook, and we're not going to bring bawang to somebody's house. So I guess you give money lah.
Yeah. I think that I think it's the disconnect of a couple of generations that probably we didn't pass on the wisdom enough on why this is taking place. Now it just becomes, oh, you got wedding, you expect money lah.
Yeah. So do a balance sheet, right? How many people? Yeah. That's the shame in that. Yeah.
It is, and again, like, for me, it is not what's happening. I think, the fact that people are giving ang pao, that's fair. If you're genuinely, you want to give to someone, you want to help them out when they're starting a new life, that's fair. But for me, it becomes very odd, the expectation, and then they're like, oh, I expect to give, and then I kira who gives me what, and how am I going to give back, and all that. So again, I don't have an opinion on it. I just find it a bit weird when it becomes very transactional.
But on the other hand, I think that's the way that we can pull this off in Malaysia, right? Whether it's Malay, Chinese, or Indian, we can have these big weddings because the guests kind of pay for their own way. Right? You kind of, like you said, it's a calculation lah. If you go to this hotel, my meal's gonna cost $200, right? So you kind of pay your own, your own share.
When I was younger, out of college, when I first started working, when money was very tight, right? I think money is always tight all your life lah, but it's a degree, right? It changes the. So for me, when getting an invitation for a wedding, I was like, "Oi, I got no money to." I can't bring a date. I can't afford to bring a date to this wedding, right? And people say, "You got plus one, ah." Oh, my girlfriend's not coming for this wedding. I can afford, right? But I think my realization came is when my friends were like, "Oh, if you're going, you must give at least this much."
Yeah.
I was, whether bodoh or ignorant, I don't know lah. But I was like, "Oh, you mean people invite you? You don't just go to the wedding, ah? You only go if you can pay sort of for your seat, right?" I thought that was odd lah, right? And then I became a king of declining weddings for a while.
Yeah, but I guess in the West that doesn't happen lah. People don't expect guests to pay, right? Which is why they don't have lavish weddings, perhaps.
Right.
That's why they don't invite 700-800 people like we do. But after having gone through that experience, it was totally changed my perspective on what a wedding is supposed to be.
Yeah. I think that is something that I would not know yet. As I think that experience as a parent, getting your child married, I definitely saw hints of that in my mom when my mom after my sister's wedding, she's like, oh, it's over. Like, like it's such a, not the burden of my sister getting married, but the burden of the whole wedding, the stress of wedding and dealing with in-laws. Oh God, that is a special kind of place to be lah.
I tell you what happened after that. Because of this crazy economy, this crazy things that's happening around the world, right? Both my son and his wife lost their jobs.
Oh man.
So, they had no way of sustaining, just starting off now.
Yeah.
Both of them don't have jobs. So,
and they didn't know that before the wedding.
well, I mean, one of them did, but,
not sure.
things have happened such. So again, my wife and I had to have this conversation and said, hey, we have room in our house. It's not a huge house, but there's room. They should move back in.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you're newlywed, that's not the first thing that comes to mind. Like, you don't want to stay with your mother-in-law, right?
I can imagine. Yeah.
I mean,
it's all the stereotypes in the world.
Yeah, exactly. But they came around because we said, you need to restart. And this seems like the way to go lah. Her parents are so far away. And so they moved back in. And when I told a couple of my friends that, they were like, what? He's married, he should, get on with his life. And why is he moving back in with you? I'm like, we took the lesson we learned from the wedding is that you got to roll with the punches, man.
Yeah.
Whatever
exactly,
happens, you just have to, let's do this.
Yeah.
So we said, let's do this. So we, cleaned up a room, moved things out, moved them in. And I tell you, it's been fantastic. I mean, I've been loving it. It's only been like about a month.
Okay.
But first time in my life lah. I've never had a daughter-in-law, obviously. Somebody comes and serves tea, petang-petang, and all. I'm like, what? What is this? Nobody knew, this didn't happen before. My daughters I have two other daughters.
Okay.
And they are, as modern as
they expect you to bring the tea.
And they're both off to college anyway, so they're not home. So it's nice, to have more people in the house.
Yeah.
Typically, it's just me and the youngest, the 12-year-old, Danish, and my wife. So just the three of us. But now with them, there's five of us now, and we're having fun. There's
and you're
stuff
also
to do,
making up for the fact that you didn't really know her before.
Exactly.
And now it's a crash course to get to know each other.
It's been nice, I tell you. It's totally a new experience for me. But I'm thankful that both my wife and I have, been able to adapt and been able to, like I said, roll with the punches.
Yeah.
That's the biggest lesson.
The idea of adapting, I think that's a very understated or undervalued idea, right? That when something happens, instead of, oh my God, we can't do that. You just say, okay, you move in, you get back on your feet, and then ideally you want to move out again. That's fine lah. When you are ready, move out, right? Instead of like making a big hoopla and
exactly. I always, throughout my career, I was just calculating this. It's been over 25 years since I started work, right? So I probably hired hundreds of people, maybe more, and now I realize that, qualifications never really meant much lah in terms of your field of study, right? I don't care lah if you studied mechanics or, quantum physics or whatever, but this is the job at hand.
Right.
How are you going to do it? So I think adaptability has always been high on my kind of list of priorities when I evaluate people.
Okay.
Are you able to change? Are you able to adapt? Are you able to, figure things out? That's critical, because if you're so rigid, especially in today's world, you're out already. There's no way for you to win if you can't roll and you can't change. You can't
actually
pivot.
I know it took us a while, but this kind of beautifully brought us to what you're doing now with Celcom Axiata, and which you are head of culture and transformation, or
culture transformation, and employee engagement.
Okay, so if you don't mind me saying, I think especially in the past maybe 5 to 10 years, 10 years is pushing it lah, but maybe 5 to 10 years, with all this idea of the startups, this our obsession with startups and all that, this word culture has been thrown around a lot, especially from a working environment lah, right? This office culture, work culture, and all that. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of people also misuse the word just to sound a little bit hip, right? So I think you're probably one of the more qualified people to kind of talk about it in the sense that um, without just using what do you call just throwing off all the hype words
all the
and try to like
jargon.
we're a wonderful company, we appreciate employee culture without actually understanding what that means, right? So from your point of view, if you're looking at it, say not just at Celcom Axiata, but what is your general view of when you say working culture?
Well, you know, the fact that I got into Celcom, I thought was a testament to the culture that they're trying to build. You
Okay.
know, because my CV is not typical lah.
Okay.
And number one, I never had transformation or culture in any of my job positions previously.
Okay.
I've had years. I have gaps in my CV that, you know, bats can fly through. Things that I went off and did my own thing, and
Okay.
you know, all of this stuff. So to enter into a organization like Celcom, usually you need a pristine CV, right? You need to go from one job to another. You show progress. You show that you've done this. You've proven this and that. So I was a risky bet for them.
Okay.
I would say. Because I did not fit the typical mold of somebody senior that they're supposed to hire
Right.
for a organization like them. So anyway, when I joined, the CEO Idham said he also had just joined.
Okay.
He joined in late 2018. I joined 1st January 2019.
Okay.
So he said he has visions of where he wants to bring, and startup came up. You know, at that time Celcom was 31 years old.
Okay.
And he said we need to act more like a startup because of the situation that we're in, and the industry that we're in is ever changing, constantly changing. So then there was this realization that people have a comfortable way of working, and what they want to do, and what they've done before had achieved success.
Right.
About 8 years ago, Celcom was on this trajectory, 33 continuous quarters of growth.
Wow.
Unheard of, right?
Wow.
Fantastic.
This would be around under Shazali. This would be
about Shazali's time.
Yeah.
So quarter on quarter growth for 30 odd quarters. It's unheard of, right? It's unbelievable. And if you can imagine people at that, employees at that stage, they're getting rewarded. Everything they do turns to gold.
Yeah.
You know, you're at the height. So at that point in time, is totally different from where we are now.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we're kind of struggling. I mean, there's competition is crazy. Price war, all of this thing does not bode well for people who don't want to change.
Right.
Unless you are able to adapt, and unless you can embrace this uncertainty, there's no way that we could, you know, move from where we are right now. So when I came on board, he said we need somebody who is able to convey those messages and talk about it authentically to the guys, because it's hard to change success. You know, if somebody's been there, somebody can say, I was there. I built this 30 quarter growth. You know, I contributed towards that. I don't want to change. So, you know, perhaps somebody like me who has started up businesses, who have failed miserably in stuff that I've done before, is able to kind of tell that story. And story is important as well. I mean, you telling stories through this podcast, and I kind of try and teach people how to convey those messages in stories that people can understand and relate to, so that then they can see, oh, this is the change that I need to make, because this is where we want to go. Because Idham has a vision, and I'm so thankful that he also believes that, you know, it's people first. It's about being humane and being kind to one another and respecting one another, and that's the foundation of the growth that we're going to go to. So I believe Celcom is in a fantastic place right now, even though it's tough. If you're looking at business-wise, it's difficult, but this is where we need to be in order to grow and succeed in the future. So I believe we're in a great place. We need to see this through, this transformation that's happening. and we need to rally people together. So that's kind of my priorities now.
So in terms of, if you don't mind me, just a little bit of a distraction in the sense that you mentioned the importance of storytelling, right? And I think, for me, I think one of, I dare say, like, one of my advantages, right, is I somehow had this realization of being able to tell a story, or learning how to tell a story, right, very early on. And for me, I see that in almost everything that I do. Even if it's, whether it's communicating to your family, to your staff, to your investors, to anybody, the ability to frame anything into a story is so important. And
Critical.
I try to, I had a very small team, and even when I talk to them and they come and present to me, oh, we plan to do this, right? And then I'm like, no, tell me the story, right? Tell me, what was it like before? Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? What you expect the results to be? And, and if it goes wrong, what would you do?
Right.
What is our period? So tell me the story, right? And for me, it's very obvious that everybody should be able to tell a story. But I realized that most people are not programmed that way. They see it like bits and pieces of information, and they come out. When I studied, my BM is okay lah. But when I studied like Karangan and all, I really liked the idea of, they say, your opening, your EC, and then your penutup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see everything like that. I see everything like,
structure
you got 3 points to make. Okay, that's 3 EC, right? So what's your opener? What is your EC you want to give? And what's your summary, like your penutup, right? So any conversation I have, I tend to always think. So even when I say, okay, I want to tell you something, in my mind, I'm, okay, how do I introduce the idea? What do I want to talk about it? And how do I summarize it? And I feel that gives you a sense of clarity, right? And I'm not saying it that, oh, this is if you want to run a business, or this is if you want to make a proposal. I think for anything,
for anyone,
if you want to communicate how you feel, what your idea is, this, the thing that you're saying about storytelling, it is so incredibly important. And I feel it's so undervalued. I don't know why people don't pay enough attention to it.
Exactly. And I tell you, when I started getting into this more seriously, I mean, I've always, like you, have had that kind of ability to tell stories lah.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because my late father, was a storyteller. He wrote books. He wrote. I mean, if you studied sastra in Form 6, he's in the textbook. He was like he's named as the founder of this realism drama kind of concept in Malaysia. So his name is Professor Mustafa Kamil Yassin.
Okay.
His pen name is Kala Dewata.
Okay.
So if you look that up, his most famous karya, his book is called Atap Genting, Atap Rembia, which is a social commentary about, the high class and the lower class.
I understand Atap. What is Genting and Rembia?
Genting is clay roof.
Okay.
Rembia is the grass, the kampung roof.
Okay.
So it's about town and kampung.
Okay. Got it.
So it's about class differences.
Okay.
So anyway, he is a master at it lah. He's a master at storytelling. So I remember when I think was 7 years old, standard 1, I entered this storytelling competition lah in school. So he gave me this master class, right? I was just rolling around laughing because he was in the bedroom, jumping on the bed, telling me this story. I'm like, I could never do that,
Okay. And when you say jumping on the bed, it's like,
he's really acting it out. I mean, at that time he was probably my age now, right? And he was so passionate about it, and I just love that about him. But I never really got into it. But a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I was invited to give my first TEDx talk.
Wow.
At UTP in Perak. So then I started to kind of study this, right? I mean, I'm expected to give a TEDx talk. I better know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it really is all about telling the story. It's all about, because Chris Anderson, the guy who does TED, is talking about, if you can't share the emotion in the story, it's not a story. It's just telling facts. You're just giving a fact sheet. So the difference between a fact and a story is emotion. So once you inject that into whatever you're trying to say, and we've been talking about emotions since we started, right? When we started this conversation, is about how people, project emotions and all that. So I think we've come to a nice circle here. About my view right now about storytelling is just that. It's facts plus emotion. And if you don't inject that emotion somehow, people are going to forget it. And you rightfully said that people are not programmed to tell those stories. However, we are hardwired to listen to stories. People crave stories because that structure is like ingrained in our brain, right? We are hardwired because we want to know what, like you said, what's the pembukaan, what's the opening. And then as soon as you tell that, people are already thinking about, okay, what's the first 2-3 points? And as soon as you tell them the points, they want to come to that nice conclusion, the nice ending, and they want to feel satisfied. Which is why we're so unsatisfied when somebody doesn't. There's no ending to your story.
The only thing I would add on when I got into sort of the working world with startups and all that is I just added at the end next steps. Right? Because you need to summarize, and then what are you going to do now? That's it. That's the next step.
People want to know, right? What you want to do. But when you tell a story, the next steps becomes there's hope for the future. There's, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's something bigger that we can achieve. So those kind of things is what people don't typically do. And what we're doing in Celcom now is actually we're taking the top 100 leaders in our organization and we are training them on storytelling. All 100 of them. So we're going to go through this entire process of how a story starts, what you need to tell it. What is
the framework you are using, or are you just you're making it up as you go?
No, we actually have a trainer that has proposed this entire process that he goes through, and it's broken up into 4 different sessions. And of course, we have this virtual academy in Celcom that has all of the resources at our fingertips, so we can access it anytime. And there's these 4 checkpoints that we go through. We haven't started it yet. We're about to start on basically how to tell stories. So we understood that it was so important that we want all of our leaders to have this ability, to have the skill. So we see that there is a skills gap, right? There is a competency gap that people are not able to do it naturally.
People don't. Am I right to assume that people don't even realize that it is a skill that they need?
Yeah. So I'm glad that in our organization, there is already that realization, and we've already launched it, and we are already going to. We actually last year started this thing called Speak at Celcom, where we allowed people to take the stage and share and share.
Okay, so we were talking about
storytelling for our leaders. So definitely there's a gap where people they don't realize that they think they can just spew out facts and figures and people will be interested. And they kind of say, why don't people remember what I'm saying? Why aren't they taking action? Why don't they listen? So it's not about not listening. It's that whatever you said, it doesn't make sense to me or doesn't engage my senses. So it just goes away. We are in this world where there's so much information and there's so many distractions, right?
So unless we attach an emotion to information,
precisely,
it's very hard to kind of retain it.
It's almost impossible because there's just so many things going on at once.
And this I've always heard this from people, right? Is if you are if you're a storyteller, right? They almost always discount you as he can talk lah, right? Or of course he can present lah. Dia boleh cakap. Ask him to present, right?
Exactly.
And they kind of dismiss it not as a skill. They just see it as he's not shy, or or
you're born with it. So it's not something that you build or develop.
And in my case at least, right, it was something that a lecturer in college told me to, you can talk and all that. You got to build this public speaking thing, and it was an active decision, that I had to make. But then even now, when I talk to people are like, oh yeah, okay, Ija can lah. He can public speaking, no problem, no problem. So they, so I do feel like, if you're saying you're getting the top 100 people in the organization to truly understand the art of storytelling and to, in a way, master it, right? I think that's super important. That's super duper important.
I think this will have, personally, I think this will have more impact than any other. You can train people technical stuff. And you can say, this is how you save money, this is how you're gonna improve customer service, whatever.
Right.
And all of that is ongoing anyway. We're doing all of these changes, but I think just making sure that our leaders have the ability to convey these messages to their people in a more effective way. I think this, when we look back at it a few years later, we will say this is what changed Celcom. This is what turned us into this different animal, this different organization.
And an organization as big as Celcom, right? Celcom Axiata comes with its own set of challenges, right? I give you a simple example. When I was running a small startup, we tried to do a lot of people culture type of steps, right? They say, oh, don't wait until you make it, start early, blah, blah, and all that. And I realized that a lot of the things that we did not really work because it is difficult to build a culture out of 3-4 people, right? And because also there's no gang, everybody feels kind of alone. They have not found their place in the organization, right? So unless the 3-4 people are very strong characters, it's very hard I felt that it's very hard to get it off, right? So in my mind, I always thought that, it would have been nicer if you were a bigger organization, that it'll be easier to get a buy-in. And once there's so-called positive peer pressure for the culture, it's easier for anybody joining in to come and be part of the culture and grow the culture, right? But also at the same time, I realize it's a double-edged knife, because when an organization is so big, trying to transform a culture is mission impossible,
it's
right?
Tough,
So what does, in the way you see it, what does, not say what, how do you think transformation of an organization's culture in a practical way, right? Is it always just going to be top down, or is it middle down? Will there ever be a bottom up approach? I don't know, but how does that?
Well, they say if you don't manage the culture will manage you, right? Because the culture is not something that you can manufacture. Culture is a result of everything that people go through. So we're talking about employee experience now, right? It's not just about how to engage them, how satisfied your employees are. It's about the entire experience of them being an employee, from the time they wake up till the entire life, right? As an employee. So that entire experience is what's going to change the culture. So I'll give you an example. When you're saying a small organization, YIM was small. We had at the most 60 people at one time. But in our organization, about 40 people.
Okay.
So we had a very casual dress code, right?
Okay.
Because we were going out into the kampung and all that. Everybody wears jeans and t-shirts. Kind of startup-y lah. So trying to go against the grain, what I instituted was formal Fridays. So everybody has formal
got a reason
all
to dress
week,
up.
right? And then Friday people dress down typically. But we say we are dressed down every day. So let's dress up on Fridays. So we had suits on, gowns, everything, the whole works. And we had photo shoots, everything on Friday. So it was a great idea that brought everyone closer together, and it was a fun conversation point for everyone else as well. So when I joined Celcom in January, I posted on we had our internal social media thing called Workplace, right? It's Facebook for office. So I said, since we dress down every day here, so I wanted to take a page from my old book lah. I said, let's do formal Fridays, right? And it was one of the most engaged posts ever. Hundreds, thousands of comments, right? And I said, okay, let's do a poll. Nobody wanted it, right? Nobody wanted it. So I said, whatever lah, you guys, I'm going to wear a suit on Friday.
Okay.
Every Friday, I'm going to wear a suit and tie. So for 2019, 40 weeks, right? 40 Fridays, I wore a suit.
Okay.
And this year, I continued doing so until MCO lah. So, and then I kind of relaxed a bit. I wore a suit without a tie. So a suit, a proper suit and a nice dress shirt to work on Fridays. Every Friday. without fail.
Mm.
Till today, I have 0 followers. Nobody wanted anything
Interesting.
to do with it.
Okay.
Nobody. So you can't force people to do stuff, right? But at least they say this guy is consistent, hard-headed, the Gale.
But why do you think that? So is it because did they have a formal culture before?
They did. Before I joined, it was interesting because everybody wore suit and tie to work.
Okay.
Every day, right?
Okay.
Every day. They did not even have form of a dress down Fridays. Every day they wore a suit, company tie, blue Celcom tie. And one day, at that time wasn't the present, past CEO came on board, had a town hall.
Right.
So he was talking about, interestingly enough, startup culture and all of this. We need to, act fast and all of this. So one young man is still working in Celcom today, and all of us need to thank him for this. His name is Nabil. At that time, he was a protege or a trainee of Celcom. And he puts his hands up and he goes, Mr. CEO, you're talking about all of this, yet we're dressed in shirts and ties right now, in suits. Doesn't convey what you just said. So the CEO made the decision on the spot. We said, that was a Friday. He said, okay, on Monday, all of us come in jeans and t-shirts. So from that day on,
wow,
we are benefiting from that decision and that brave young man who put up his hand. Interestingly enough, when I just joined Celcom, he's part of HR as well, and I report to the chief HR officer. And there's this WhatsApp group, and he says, I can't believe Aziph joined. When I was a student, I visited him. So that's how young he is. And he has this newspaper clipping of him and a group of kids and me as the COO of him there. So he said, full circle lah, bro. I said, this one incredible. You could not script it lah.
Man.
So he's the guy.
How, okay, in terms of transformation, right? Because I think it's also one of those overused terms, right? How do you measure for yourself, not your KPI for HR, but how do you measure transformation? What would a good, I will discount 2020, what will a good 2021 look like?
More and more, because of course there's all of these formal measures like employee engagement scores and indexes and all of this. Honestly, we can't trust that 100%. At the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, right? If the culture supports the business will thrive. So I know I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here, but because I don't have hard KPIs like the rest of the chiefs. But ultimately, the proof of a good culture is your business performance. So if you're not profitable, if you don't bring in the numbers, something must be wrong somewhere, and culture has to have a responsibility to it.
I can back up your statement, right? In a sense, in a very small way, because we had no clue when we were in my startup, when we were trying to do this people and culture. What we did was we looked at like Google and all these people, and then we had this whole objectives and key results, OKRs, that Google kind of champions lah. And we were kind of using that framework to kind of like make sure everybody's engaged with what they're doing, understanding the meaning behind what they're doing. So the OKRs are supposed to enable every person to kind of set your own targets and kind of motivate yourself, right? To kind of set the tone of, instead of top down, it's more like bottom up, right? And what we realized along with this, we did like Culture Fridays, where we stop work at 4:30, have maybe pizza together, the team, we share openly. Maybe somebody wants to do a presentation, nothing to do with work lah, more about us, right? And when we started doing those things, the intention was to kind of build this culture of sharing and all that. What it ended up being was people trying to just game the system, right? The people were like, oh, we gotta do this Friday one. Who's gonna present? Hey, you present. Oh, I don't. Hey, what to order? What is? So suddenly the issue became, how are we gonna host this? What are you gonna order? Who's gonna present? Okay, you present this one. I don't know what to do. And suddenly they were just gaming it to the checklist of we did a Culture Friday.
Get it done.
Yeah, somebody did a presentation. So it was not authentic. It was not genuine. And once we tried to track people from a metrics point of view, right? People were just gaming it.
Yeah.
And I imagine if you were to put something like that, if you're like, oh, can you have checklists to see how this goes?
That's
People will game it lah.
For sure. For
Right?
sure. That's a great point, because last year we have this concept called cross-functional teams, CFTs. So outside of your BAU, whatever you're doing on your job, you can sign up to join one of these teams. We had 26, I think, last year. And all of them were about how to improve Celcom as an organization. So it's about customer service or whatever. One of the tribes, we call them tribes, is culture.
Okay.
And I was appointed as the tribe master. So as a tribe master, people sign up voluntarily, right? From all over the organization. We were the biggest tribe. We had 120 people in this tribe. So even though in my BAU I have very few people reporting to me, but in this CFT I had 100 over people reporting to me.
So people from any department across the organization
across
can
the
have
country, really.
input on
and
culture.
We actually put it in the KPIs. So they have 40% of their KPIs for the year 2019 was based on their performance in this tribe. So we actually institutionalized it. So again, I had a tribe of 100 over people, and we had things that, it was very agile based. So once a week we would meet and we would decide on the sprint for the next 2 weeks. What are we going to build? How are we going to measure it? And how are we going to test it? So we did so many things over 2019 because people were motivated. Number one, we had a very fun team and we organized a lot of cool stuff, right? On runs, songs, sing-alongs, whatever, movie screenings, talks and all that came about from there, just to make sure that life at Celcom was vibrant, it's fun, and it's engaging. So the assumption is, if you are engaged and you are having fun and you are being valued, you will perform better as an employee.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win, right? The company invests to make sure that your life in the company is good, it's fun, it's engaging, and you will then perform better for the company. So interestingly, we had to have a balance lah. There had to be KPIs because, or not, how are you gonna?
It's just all fun lah.
Yeah, it's all fun. Nobody's gonna do anything or do anything measurable.
Yeah.
And because 40% of their KPIs was based on that, we had to get serious, right? We had to have these conversations about what are you doing. But because it was agile based, I think this is the key. Because in agile, we had daily stand-ups.
Okay.
Right, and we broke everybody into squads. Even though there's 100 odd of us, each squad only had like 5, 6, 7 people, and they were all self-organized. There's no designated leader. Everybody has to report what they're doing, and that kind of peer pressure really puts, really gets people moving, because you have to stand up there every single day and say, this is what I've done yesterday. This is what I'm going to do today. These are my goals for the week, and you basically just report to each other, right? And we felt that was an excellent experiment for the organization, and we're moving agile way of working into a larger portion of the organization. There's no longer this CFT where it's only 40%. Now everything is, there's no split anymore. So if you're put in one of these agile teams, you are expected to perform, and that's how you're going to be measured.
So who drives this framework, like, agile, and it's almost like a Scrum methodology, right? Where you have stand-up meetings and all that, right? Who puts all this together?
There's a digital team that we have that's led by the chief digital officer.
Okay.
So it's very high-level sponsorship lah.
Okay.
And the digital team is very cool. They have weekly town halls.
Okay.
But as you imagine, even a small company like you found it difficult to sustain that.
Yeah.
But they're doing that on a weekly basis, and they have awards, and they have on a weekly basis. They vote for the best performing team, and they have fun with it. They have games, they dress up, and they come. So that's basically, when you look at demographics, that's the youngest. In terms of age and in terms of tenure in Celcom, this is the youngest team. So the intention was for this group to kind of infuse the whole organization with this new digital way of working, which I think is a success. It's not overnight. We have many people in the organization that have been 20 years with us, 30 years with us, and nothing wrong with that. It's just that to refresh an organization, it's not just as simple as just bringing in new people, right? You have to refresh the minds. You have to refresh the way people
this
work.
reminds me of I read a book a while back. It's by the CEO of IBM who wrote about even elephants can dance, right? And the fact how an organization like IBM,
huge,
who is you can call like a dinosaur, had to pivot in the most massive of ways. And when you say like people have been in the organization for 20 years and 30 years, where where the assistant probably has assistants, right? In the sense that there's this bureaucracy, this little bureaucracies built up, and they have these little Napoleons across the organization. I can only imagine it is not always bad. It is not always bad, but in most cases, you're used to a certain habit, a way of doing things that might not be what the organization needs to move, especially if it's moving in a different direction, lah.
What we've done over the past few years, before my time even, was kind of dismantle a lot of those dinosaur era kind of things. We are a very flat organization. So before we had like 15 levels or whatever. Now there's no titles.
One of the things, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we have been going on for a while, right? I know you have to run soon as well. But one of the things that I wanted to get your thoughts on, which I think is also, I will put a caveat. This is a very sensitive issue, right? But I think it is an issue that we somehow need to talk about, right? And even when I try to bring this up with other people, you find yourself dancing around, right? And I think when it comes to, you mentioned just now, especially the youth, the young people now in the workforce, right? There's this whole sentiment about millennials and how they don't appreciate their job and all that. But there's also an underlying current where there seems to be stereotypes, even dare I say, between the races, right? There's a stereotype of what a Malay employee is, and there's a stereotype of what a Chinese employee is, and there's a stereotype of what an Indian employee is, right? And when I first hear these things, it's easy to dismiss, these people just being discriminatory, being racist, and all that. And for me, I found it very worrying was when I heard from a friend who works in a placement company, HR company, one of the big ones, where they are just doing outsourced HR placement, right? Where companies give them mandates where for the same role, they're willing to pay more for a Chinese candidate, right? And those kind of practice, the skill set all same, and those kind of practices I found very scary, right? Why are we willing to pay more to someone based purely on the race, right? And this person was talking to me, they're Indian, right? But even they were telling me that they have very negative stereotypes for Indians because and they come up with all this. They set they're supposed to start work and they don't turn up, they just disappear. So there's all these stereotypes attached to race, right? And for me, the scary part is they can even tell me that when you offer a job to a Chinese candidate, they will think about it because they got so many options. And it's not the same for the rest, right? And I think it's easy to just say, I personally don't think the races are different in terms of their output. But there is definitely something that's different in terms of, I don't know whether it's a mindset or it's a way they approach work. There's something different that is causing such stereotypes, which I think still exist to this day. I don't think it is something that's been solved.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people behave the way they are raised, right? I'm a Malay. I grew up a portion of my young life in the States. So I'm probably more American than Malay lah.
Today is a very
in terms of
controversial
language,
day for you, right?
in terms of language, I'm English or American English or Midwestern American English is my first language because I first started to speak when I was 3, about there.
Mm.
So from 3 to 7, I grew up in the States. So that was my
Okay.
first language. Then I moved back to Malaysia, and my dad taught at USM. So he moved to Penang.
Mm.
So Penang, Northern Malay is my second language, right?
Okay.
So bahasa Melayu baku ni is way distant third lah. So in that sense, sometimes I don't relate. 'Cause I never watched P. Ramlee movies growing up. All of my friends, regardless of race, will quote lines from P. Ramlee movies. I have no idea what it's about. It's not a reference for me.
Right,
I can't
right.
get it. So people will behave the way the references that they have growing up. And it's very clear that there's no racial differences lah. Maybe it's just because of my family, right? My brother married a German. My sister now lives in DC. I have a nephew living in New York City. So we're a very global family. And we kind of don't have those kind of racial assumptions or presumptions. And as an organization, for sure, we have a very strong diversity policy. We're very careful about anything related to that. So we're very, very aware, and we make conscious decisions to kind of break those things down. Although we are predominantly Malay organization, I would say, in terms of employees,
Right.
but basically it mirrors the Malaysian
Yeah.
population lah.
Wait, no, actually, when somebody tells me any company or any government agency is majority Malay, I'm like, yeah, we're in
reflects
Malaysia.
the
That is
population,
the population breakdown. Ma.
Yeah.
If the population of the country majority, 60-70% is Malays,
Yeah.
you would expect that in every company.
Yeah. And I have to say that we have a very strong representation of, well, not strong, I would say it mirrors the
Okay.
Malaysian population.
Right.
So we have many Chinese, we have many Indians, we have a few expats, not that many anymore, and many Malays.
Right.
So I have, in my 2 years in Celcom, haven't seen any sort of racial
No,
kind
but
of
I am not.
issues.
I am not saying that the workplace has racial issues, right? I think maybe what I'm asking you is not so much as your capacity as somebody who works in Celcom. Maybe given your experience over the years, and when you see, what I'm trying to get at is, why do people have or hold on to these stereotypes, right? That is what troubles me, because if just say today I hire somebody and they are terrible, right? Why do I attach, he's
Race.
Chinese, Malay, Indian, and he's terrible, so all Indians, instead of understanding that this human being was not good at this job, I need to look for another human being, right?
I think we as a society need to address it. I mean, I think you're very courageous in raising it. I think we need to have those conversations. I think the United States is the way they are because they don't talk about it. They don't openly talk about slavery. They don't openly talk about how repressed the blacks are in their society. It's on the fringe. And because those conversations don't happen, it never gets solved. As opposed to, for example, in South Africa, they had worse, right? They were apartheid, they had it really bad. But they had this conversation immediately after this reconciliation committee that talked about race and openly talked about in the society. So now they're over it. So in 1-2 generations, as opposed to 500 years in the States, right? And they still can't get over it. But I think Malaysia needs to have this conversation as well. We need to talk about it. Why do you think Chinese do this? Why do you say Malay is like this? Because it's not religion based. No religion preaches racism. It's something that is learned and taught to us. I honestly believe that it was something that had ulterior motives. I think that the colonials, when they came in, forced racism.
Right.
They put Chinese in the cities and they
Easy
put
to
Indians
control,
in the plantations. And in order to control it, they had to split us up. They had to pit us against each other. It's not natural. It's not natural for a people
Unity
to hate
is
other
the
people.
enemy of colonialism, lah.
Exactly. So they played that game and we're sucked into it after hundreds of years. and it's kind of programmed into us lah.
Yeah.
So we need to deprogram that, and the only way to deprogram that is conversations and by getting the truth out.
Yeah, you know, my very simplistic, and I will admit to you, I have a very simplistic way of looking at things, right? That even when it comes to and politics is not my favorite subject, but even when you will look at a country as a whole, for me is the way I always think is why do we have to have race-based parties? In a sense, hear me out. In a sense that if the focus of our leaders and governments was, we want to help the B40, no matter what, right? We want to help B40, whether you are, Indian, Chinese, Malay, we want to help the B40, right? By the nature of our, our cultural mix, right? The majority of the country is Malay, right? So if you're helping everybody, the majority of the people you're helping are the Malay, right? But I always don't understand why is this not an obvious fact, in the sense that why do we feel that if we help everybody, why do we have this feeling that, the Indians will lose, or the Chinese will lose, or the Malays will lose? I always struggle with it. I don't know whether it's just politicians doing their thing. I don't know. But why don't we have this idea of, hey man, if we help everybody, everybody's going to be better.
Right?
Yeah, and I don't know whether that is that bottom-up thinking where people have these stereotypes against. I can easily say people definitely have a stereotype for Indians. But like you mentioned, right? I think one of the key things is how you're brought up, right? Because even when you talk about Chinese, Indian, Malay, and all the other races and whatnot, is there's the whether your family is middle class, or your family is below the poverty line, there's a difference in the way you're brought up. So actually, the Chinese, Indian, and Malay, who are in middle class, probably have more in common with each other than they have with, even though you're a Chinese, but you're in the poverty line, right? But we don't seem to talk about that. Somehow we don't talk about, we don't
Class
separate
differences.
Yeah, we don't separate in terms of class, but we're separating in terms of race.
Yeah.
And I find that very, I don't know. I don't know whether that's the.
I have the same thinking. I've always thought that we shouldn't have race-based parties. But again, I think the assumption is goodness of mankind, right?
Yeah.
If everybody has that,
Yeah.
it will be fine.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's always people with different motives, ulterior motives. If it was up to, compared to Scandinavian countries, for example, Scandinavia has the highest happiness index. It has the highest satisfaction. It probably also has the highest tax rates. But because people are willing to pay almost 50% of their salary to the government, because the government takes care of them.
Yeah.
They have the highest reserves. They can survive. Norway can survive without oil for the next 100 years.
Yeah.
They have enough money.
They are supposed, because I think their sovereign fund is doing so well that everybody's a millionaire, right? I think every Norwegian is technically a millionaire.
They have no complaints, I mean, they pay taxes through their noses.
Yeah.
People hate that, but they're taken care of. Healthcare is free. University up to PhD is free. You don't have to, you don't have to deal with those things, because they have, I think, politicians that are accountable.
But do you feel, I mean, to be fair, right? I do feel this part of the world, we have a bigger challenge, because especially the Scandinavian countries, they don't deal with the I think the cultural diversity that we deal with.
Yeah, the kind of,
they are mainly white. There's a lot of immigrants
kind of,
and all that, but there seems to be the minority. So in that sense, they look at themselves as one people, right? Whereas here we tend to divide.
You're right. Well, yeah, you're right. Because of that, the history lah. And like I was alluding to, our history is complex, right? And if you want to talk about who was here first and all of that, I'm very clear that my family came from Indonesia. Only 5 generations ago. And my dad actually took me to our homeland in Sumatra.
Wow.
As I finished studying in the States, I was old at that time. He said, let's go back kampung.
Right.
So you go back kampung all the time. So in Negeri Sembilan. No, it's a real kampung. So we took a ferry from Malacca to Dumai in Indonesia. and from Dumai took like a 15-hour bus ride through the ravines and cliffs.
Wow.
Then from Bukit, from there to the real kampong. This is where our
Sorry, I
from.
think the mic.
Okay. Yeah. So this is where our people are from. So to me it's clear. I've only been here a few generations, probably 1 or 2 generations more than your wife's family.
Yeah.
Maybe you can.
Yeah.
But the complexity arises where we had a Malay dynasty. We had a Malay sultanate. It was a Malay country, right? And then artificially people were brought in by the Mat Saleh.
Yeah.
So it becomes complex,
Yeah.
because this is not, it's only 100 odd years ago.
Yeah. No, actually, somebody, a friend of mine, brought up this idea where they are drawing parallels between the US, where the whites and the blacks in the US, and here where it's the Malays and the non-Malays, right? Then I was telling them that the Malays never brought us as slaves.
Yeah.
Right? The Malays never ruled the Chinese and the Indians, right? In fact, if anything, all 3 of us were in the same boat with the colonials. But the colonials are the one that was exploiting the land and the people.
Exactly.
So why we cannot have the same kind of what do you call it? We can't look at the Malays the way the blacks look at the whites, because we were never enslaved, right?
True.
And people don't really think about that.
No.
Right? They kind of just draw that same parallel as in, now the Malay party is in control, right? But I'm like, yeah, but majority in the country is Malays, right? So
but the thing is, why we're not having this sort of conversation, I think generally among everyone in the kopitiams, is that for the Malays, for the Malay parties for them to remain in power, their message is Ketuanan Melayu, which means Malay supremacy, which it's hard for me to, as a religious man, it's against my religion, basically. Because the Prophet said, no Arab is better than a non-Arab. No non-Arab is better than an Arab.
Yeah.
No white man is better than a black man. No black man is better than a white man. Except for your piety towards God.
Yeah.
So to me, I cannot accept that just because I'm a Malay, I have to be superior to you or to somebody else.
Yeah.
But the political parties play that up. And you can say, because we had a sultanate, because our sultan ruled this land, and we have to continuously, the idea is this was our land.
Yeah.
And now we're sharing with 2 other main races.
Yeah.
And they want equality. So the argument is, how tak boleh equal lah? This is my land, you came as... So because of that, as long as there's people like that espousing these kind of views, we're going to have trouble.
No, I can understand the fear that they propagate, in the sense that they kind of, I imagine if I was in that shoe, right? If I'm Malay and I was indoctrinated, people are saying that, hey, if you make it equal, they will
Habis lah.
They will take away your culture, they'll take away your religion, and you have no control. So what I actually want is, I want my way of life. I like my way of life.
Right.
I like my my culture, my religion, and I don't want that to be taken away, right? And I think I believe most people are in that boat, in the sense that the fear is, if we become equal, suddenly the Hindus or the Christians and all will start imposing on us, which I will accept, which is also a scary thought for people.
True.
It's a scary thought to think that suddenly whatever you believe can be negated by somebody else.
True.
And I think that's maybe where the responsibility of our leaders is to say, because for me, I always go back to, if we help everybody, we all have a better life, instead of trying to always divide.
Yes, for sure. But again, there's this fear, because history has proven that people with ulterior motives actually have major influence and can change, whole races or whole people's lives. And they kept, one of the things I just read about was in Cambodia, and I was in Cambodia with my son a couple of years ago, and they actually also had a Muslim majority sultanate there. But it was and say pendatang lah, people who came, who were not from the land, from another race, imposed their will and took over the economy, and suddenly the people of the land who were Muslim is now a small minority who are being oppressed.
Actually, you are exactly right, because if we go through history and we look at, like, for example, the Cambodian, even we were there, when listening to the stories, when the Hindus came out, suddenly they convert, they destroy everything, and suddenly it's rebranded as a new religion, right? And if somebody else takes over,
it's scary. So it is legitimate fear among people, and of course, people are worried about China's expansion, for example, China's dominance,
and they
how they're throwing their money around and buying stuff.
No, that, and also that if I'm not mistaken, they are the communists. I don't want to say communist. Seems like such a negative word, right? But they are the Communist Party does not recognize religion, right? If you believe in the Communist Party,
that's another scary thing.
That means you are an atheist, like, by default. You cannot believe in a religion if you believe in the Communist Party, right? And that is scary, because most people have some kind of faith in some kind of religion,
of course,
right? So to tell them that suddenly you see this superpower coming in and taking over the world, and especially if US continues to behave like this, I think China is just going to be more powerful.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it's scary. It's scary for people.
Actually, there are legitimate reasons.
Yeah, there's legitimate. I mean, the way China is oppressing the Uyghurs, right? They're basically internment camp for the entire race.
And total 100% denial.
Nobody can do anything about it.
100% denial.
Myanmar, Nobel Peace Prize winner, who's oppressing an entire race. Genocide is happening under her watch, and she's not doing anything. And she's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Of course, people will use this to stoke fear here in Malaysia. We're in paradise, man. This is.
I agree.
This is a beautiful country with beautiful people, but some people will use these things to scare, fear mongering, and again, our history shows that people in power don't have our best interest at heart. That's the worrying thing. If we trust them to do the best for us, then okay lah. But as soon as we give trust, then they break the trust. And then in Malaysia, you can get away with it, and people will forget it after a few years. You still see the same names that were arrested. You still the same. They have power, and you're like, come on, something has to change.
Okay, so I think I know you have to run, so we wrap it up. I think from talking to you, I know we kind of went here, there, everywhere. To end at a positive note, right? How or what do you think? As you said, it starts at home, right? What do you think is the value that we should aspire to teach our kids, or even ourselves, for them to be able to be a better person lah, whether it's in the workplace, whether as a Malaysian. What do you think, now that you have married one off?
No, I truly believe that if you want to succeed in any field, right, you need to be a good person first. I think that's simplistically saying, and this came about many years ago, actually, through MLMs, multi-level marketing, right? So you're supposed to convince people about what you do. And my son, he's 20 years old. He recently signed up for one.
Okay.
So he was kind of worried, didn't think I would support him. But I said I had actually been in a few over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So the thing that struck me was that what they were teaching was that you need to be a good guy first in your community before anybody will trust you, and you have to do it authentically. You can't cheat people into saying that you're a good guy and trying to get business from people. That doesn't work, according to this particular company. And that struck me because in my neighborhood now, there's a guy from that company, and he is the best dude around, man. He's the most helpful. Whatever you need, he's there. If you're in trouble, he's there. So I feel that we need to teach our kids this. If you want to make an impact in any level of your life, first and foremost, you need to be a good guy and you need to be authentic about it. You can't trick people in the long term, right? Over time, there's no way to lie about who you are. Your true personality will come out, and you will be judged based on that. So first and foremost, be a good guy. Help people out. You know, that's the main thing.
I think that is pristine advice. A great way to end a very long podcast. I know you have to run.
Right.
Aziph, thank you so much for doing this with me. I do have more questions, but we'll have to save it for another one.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Good
a
luck
great
with your upcoming event in December. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
And I will keep up with you on LinkedIn.
Thanks,
hopefully.
man. Appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out and inviting me.
It was a pleasure. It was good to connect after so many years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Take care, man.
Thanks.